forest has always been my sanctuary. A sprawling cathedral of pine and shadow where the earth's pulse drowns out the hollow din of a life I'd rather leave behind. My name is Travis Mallery, and in 2009, at 38, I was a man adrift. Freshly divorced, my savings reduced to a pittance smaller than a box of stale donuts. My body bearing the scars of years spent roofing under a merciless sun that had bent my spine into a permanent curve of ache. A friend's favor landed me a contract gig as a surveyor in Virginia's Jefferson National Forest. A job cataloging invasive species for the Forest Service that promised little more than solitude and a paycheck to keep my rusted Toyota Tacoma rolling and my belly full of cheap beer and gas station burritos. I had no children, no ties to tether me to a hearth I'd never tend. Just a pair of hiking boots I both loved and loathed, and a hunger for the woods silence that gnawed at me like a second skin. That morning, I parked at the trailhead of Mount Rogers, Virginia's tallest peak. A remote bastion where the trees grew thick as whispered secrets, their needles knitting a canopy that swallowed the sun's light whole. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of moss and something faintly metallic, like old pennies scattered beneath the earth's green shroud, and a low fog clung to my skin, seeping into my bones as I slung my pack over my shoulder and started up the trail. 3 miles in, the forest fell into an unnatural hush. The late morning chorus of birds silenced as if the sun had pressed a finger to their throats. I'd found kudzu creeping up maple trunks, an invasive strangler I scratched onto my beat-up clipboard, its yellowed edges curling like the pages of a forgotten tome, squinting through the haze like a fool too stubborn to admit his eyes were failing. Then I saw them. Footprints, bare and human in shape, but grotesquely oversized. Twice the span of my size 12 boots, their edges sharp and fresh in the damp, loamy soil as if pressed there moments before I'd arrived. The stride was impossible, unnaturally long, suggesting a sprint or a leap that defied the limits of flesh and bone, each print sinking deep with a weight I couldn't reconcile. No barefoot hiker would brave this rugged spine of earth. Not here, where rocks jutted like teeth and roots coiled like snares. Curiosity, a treacherous thread, pulled me forward, my steps cautious, the trees leaning closer now, their trunks dark and slick with moisture, standing like sentinels guarding a truth I wasn't meant to uncover. The fog thickened, curling around my ankles like cold, spectral hands, the air chilling until it felt like I'd stepped into a meat locker, my breath fogging faintly in the dim light filtering through the pines. By mile 4, the prints veered off-trail into a snarl of undergrowth, fallen branches snapping underfoot, thorns clawing at my pants like desperate fingers, and I pushed through, the forest's embrace tightening until I stumbled into a clearing where death waited, patient and grotesque. A deer carcass lay splayed across the earth, its ribs jutting out like splinters of driftwood, the body torn open with a precision that turned my stomach to bile. The head was gone, severed clean, no ragged bite marks, no scavenger's haste. Just a surgical absence that left the spine's end glistening wetly in the faint light. Flies buzzed a thick, relentless dirge, their hum the only sound in a silence that pressed against my skull, the stench of rot slamming into me like a sledgehammer. Coppery, rancid, a perfume of decay that coated my throat. I crouched, trying to make sense of it. Bears maul, wolves tear at the belly, but this was something else. Wounds carved with razor-sharp intent, as if a blade had danced through flesh and bone with a butcher's cruel grace. The tree-line on the clearing's far side shivered, branches swaying without wind, their needles whispering secrets in a language I couldn't parse, and I froze, my heart thumping so loud I feared it would betray me to whatever watched from the shadows. It stepped out, a towering nightmare, 7 feet of sinew and menace, its shoulders broad enough to eclipse the weak light filtering through the canopy, its arms dangling almost to its knees, ending in claws the size of steak knives, glinting faintly as they caught the fog's sheen. Its body was cloaked in matted, dark fur, patchy like a mangy dog's, stretched taut over a frame too lean, too wrong to belong to any creature I knew. The face. God help me, the face was almost human, but stretched grotesquely over a skull too large, the jaw too wide, teeth jagged and yellowed like old bone, uneven as if forced into a mouth that couldn't contain them. It stared, its chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate breaths, silent as the grave it should have been buried in. its presence a weight that pressed against my ribs until I could scarcely draw air. I bolted, boots slipping on moss-slick stones, branches whipping my face and arms, drawing thin lines of blood I didn't feel over the roar of panic flooding my veins. It crashed behind me, terrifyingly swift for its bulk, the undergrowth parting with a predator's purpose. Each snap of a twig, each thud of its steps a metronome counting down to my end. The trail loomed ahead when the ground betrayed me, my foot sinking into a hidden hole, my ankle twisting with a crack that sent pain searing up my leg like wildfire. I hit the earth hard, the wind knocked from me, my rusty K-bar knife clutched in trembling hands. A pitiful shield against this monstrosity. It towered over me, head cocked like a curious beast, its claws slashing as I swung wildly, the blade catching its forearm, dark crimson welling from the wound. It didn't flinch but growled, a low, guttural rumble that clawed at my nerves, lunging with a weight that pinned me to the dirt, its rancid breath hot against my face as its jaws snapped inches from my throat. Desperation surged, and I stabbed upward, plunging the knife into its shoulder, its howl a nerve-shredding cacophony that flung me free as it recoiled. I grabbed a branch, heavy and damp, swinging it with all I had, the first blow cracking against its arm, the second landing on its head. It staggered, claws lashing my chest through my jacket, grazing flesh as I swung again, catching its skull. I didn't wait to see if it fell. I limped back to the trail, pain a white-hot lance through my ankle, the crashing behind me growing fainter as I reached my truck, threw myself inside, and slammed the door, the bolt sliding home with a clang that echoed in my skull. The engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as I peeled down the mountain road, the forest's dark jaws shrinking in my rearview mirror, the thing's presence a lingering weight I couldn't shake. At the ranger station, I spilled my tale, expecting ridicule or a smirk. Instead, Rick, a grizzled veteran with 30 years in these woods, exchanged a glance with his partner, his face paling when I mentioned the metallic scent and the carvings he'd asked about, faint glyphs I'd glimpsed on a tree near the clearing. He pulled a dusty binder from a shelf, its cover marked unresolved, and opened it to pages yellowed with age, reports from the 1970s onward, hikers vanishing without a trace, wildlife mutilated beyond recognition, sightings of a tall, fur-clad figure dubbed the Ridge Stalker. No one had faced it and lived until me. Rick handed me a map, his tone grave, and told me to mark the spot, his usual humor buried beneath a weight I couldn't name. A week later, they found more 3 deer carcasses near the clearing, headless, cuts clean as a surgeon's scalpel, and human remains. A hiker missing for 2 months, bones stripped bare, joints pulled apart like a grotesque feast at some unholy table. I don't walk the woods anymore. My ankle never healed right, a constant throb that mirrors the memory of that face. Those eyes, watching me from the dark, a question haunting my sleepless nights. What would have happened if I hadn't fought back? Travis's encounter is but one thread in a tapestry of dread woven across America's wild places. A shadow that stretches from Virginia's peaks to the frozen tundra of Alaska, from California's dense forests to the lonely roads of West Virginia. Each tale is a shard of terror, reflecting a predator that defies reason. A creature the Forest Service knows of, yet buries in silence, its presence etched in footprints too large, claw marks too deep, remains too meticulously destroyed. Dale, a contractor in 2006, felt its grip near Circleville, Ohio, hired by a peculiar historian, Dr. Ellison, to reinforce a farmhouse's rotting barn. The wood sagged under decades of neglect, the air thick with mold and a faint coppery tang. But what stopped him cold were the claw marks. Enormous, jagged gouges raked into the beams near the entrance, far too large for any dog or coyote, their depth suggesting a strength beyond nature's design. He found a bone beneath rotted hay, splintered and gnawed, its size wrong for deer or cow, and by afternoon, a rhythmic thud echoed from the woods, deliberate, heavy, like something dragging its prey. Against the fading light, Dale followed the sound to a clearing, the stench of rot curling into his lungs, a pile of fresh bones gleaming wetly amid the undergrowth, massive tracks, twice a human foot's span, leading back to the barn. There, an 8-foot horror emerged, its fur matted and dark, its face an uncanny blend of ape and wolf, snout twitching as it locked onto him. It lunged, claws tearing through his jeans as he scrambled to his truck, the barn door banging shut behind him with a force that rattled his teeth. He sped to the sheriff, leg bleeding, but returned the next day to find the barn gone. Vanished, the dirt smooth as if it had never stood, Dr. Ellison swearing it was raccoons, his tweed-clad calm a mask Dale saw through. The tracks, the bones, the claw marks. They were real, a truth the old man buried with a check for Dale's hospital bill. Elias Thorne, camping solo in Oklahoma's McCurtain County in 2012, sought silence after a divorce stripped him bare. His tent pitched 10 miles off-trail where the cicadas' hum usually soothed him. That night, the forest went dead. No insects, no owls, just the fire's crackle and his own breath fogging in the cool air. A snapping branch broke the stillness, then a rhythmic thumping, like a hollow log pounded deep in the woods, followed by a scream, guttural and inhuman. A slaughterhouse cry that stiffened his spine. A 7-foot figure burst from the dark, first scarred and matted, arms dangling to its knees, claws black as obsidian, its wolfish face elongated with blunt, oversized teeth. Elias fired his Ruger, the shot recoiling through the silence, but it charged, relentless, until Henry Grayson, a grizzled ex-ranger, blasted it back with a shotgun, his cabin a refuge where he spoke of its kind. Smart, hunting in packs, killers that tore deer and bears alike into scraps. Malcolm Kearney, working Alaska's Barrow oil fields in 1996, faced it in the endless white, a maintenance run turning deadly when massive tracks, wider than a moose's, human yet distorted, marred the snow. A shadow loomed, broad-shouldered and fur-clad, slamming Ed down with a bone-snapping crunch, dragging him into the void as Malcolm and Gary fired flares. The snowcat rocking under its blows, its dented steel and Ed's crimson streak the only proof. Amos Wickstead, researching California's Siskiyou wilderness in 2008, found a deer's ribs splayed open, head gone, clumps of brittle, heat-scarred hair littering the creek bed. A 7-foot beast with a gorilla's flat face and wolfish jaws emerged, bear spray driving it back as he fled, campers vanishing days later, their sight a shredded ruin. Everett Lang, repairing a relay station in New York's Adirondacks in 2013, smelled rotting meat before a 6.5-foot creature with hyena-like jaws shredded the steel housing, its claws slashing as he ran, hikers disappearing near Devil's Acre soon after. Callum Foster, fishing Michigan's Huron-Manistee Forest in 2002, found a dying man fleeing a 7-foot terror, its bear-wolf face grinning as it chased him to a shack, claws scraping the walls. Lennox Graber, trucking West Virginia's Monongahela Forest in 2011, aided a hunter whose brother bled out, an 8-foot canine nightmare gouging his trailer, its pursuit a blur of jagged teeth and metal screams. Vincent Labini, canoeing Minnesota's Boundary Waters in 2016, faced a 7-foot wahila swimming toward him, claws slashing his chest before a hatchet sent it back into the dark water. Thomas Dyer died in California's Buckeye Canyon in 2007. A 7-foot predator with intelligent eyes tearing him apart as I fled on his quad, flare gun blazing. Darnell Radcliffe, tending a Colorado cabin in 2015, found a blood-soaked pile of sticks and hair, an 8-foot scarred beast battering the walls, its wolfish face peering through the glass before vanishing into the blizzard. Vincent Calderon, in Washington's Olympic National Park in 1997, rescued Cara Madsen from a cave of bones, an 8-foot gorilla-wolf hybrid hunting them, claws sinking into his shoulder before a ridge tumble spared them. Nolan Rains, surveying New Mexico's Lincoln Forest in 2016, found a stripped foot in a boot, an 8-foot horror slamming his truck, bullets felling it near a ranger station, its den a graveyard of decades vanishings. This is the Ridge Stalker's domain. Footprints too vast, claw marks too savage, remains too precise, roars too primal. A predator that straddles the line between beast and something older, its hunger etched into the land itself. The Forest Service knows, their unresolved files thick with whispers. Their silences a shroud over truths too vast to speak. What would you do, reader, if the woods went silent, if the tracks led you to a clearing of bones and blood? Could you tread the Ridge Stalker's domain, knowing it waits, patient, ravenous, its gaze a promise of oblivion? The forbidden excavation unearths these shadows, daring you to listen, to look, to wonder what hunts beyond the trees.